Kind of a weird text in Exodus today. I don't know if you've sensed a pattern, but I really like the Old Testament. This is my third Sunday in the row where we get to talk about Moses. Although today we don't really get to talk about Moses. We get to talk about Moses' sisters and brothers, the Israelites. We get to talk about, it's not even the Passover. We're not even at the Passover. What we're having described for us is the ritual that they're instituting to begin the Passover. So if we'll remember, the Passover is the event where, for the 10th plague, Moses is trying to get Pharaoh to let the people go, to let the Israelites out of slavery. And for the 10th plague, the last push to convince the Pharaoh that this would be a good thing to do, God is sending a spirit, and it's going to kill all the firstborns in Egypt, animals and humans. And so the Passover is the event in which God passes over the houses of God's faithful. And hence we get the name Passover. And how does the Spirit know to pass over the house? Well, we hear that in today's story. We hear that each household, and if they can't afford one, they're going to get together with another one. They sacrifice a lamb. And they say that can either be a 1-year-old sheep or a 1-year-old goat. And they put the blood on the doorpost, and that's how the Spirit knows to pass over the house. It's kind of a gory text for an animal lover like myself. And my wife, she loves goats and lambs and sheep, and so this isn't necessarily something we dig and like to think about a lot. But this story is important because it shows us that God works in real time. It gives us the month. It says, this is to be your first month. We're starting something new here. Now, on January 1st of every year, it seems like I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat well this year. I'm going to exercise more. And on January 1, that's going to be my start date. So I'm going to gorge myself on December 31st. And then I'm going to get to work. We like to ritualize beginnings as human beings, as human bodies. We like to ritualize beginnings. We like to have a start date. And it turns out for the Israelite people, this start date is very important. There needs to be a ritual for this Israelite people. We're in chapter 12. 4 chapters later, in Exodus chapter 16, the Israelites are in the desert and they start telling Moses, we should have stayed in Egypt. Let's go back. We miss our vegetables and our meat. We know that we will be powerless under the Pharaoh's thumb. We know that we will be breaking our backs in slavery, but we want to go back. How easy is it once we get going on something, even if it's something healthy and something good for us, how easy is it to fall back into the things we know? Because I think that's the difference for the Israelites. They're moving into something that they don't know. They have for generations been enslaved by the Egyptian Pharaoh. This is something new to them. Freedom is something new for these Israelites that have found homes, yes, slavery, but home in Egypt. And so in this Passover festival that we are told at the end is to continue throughout your generations, this shall be observed as a perpetual ordinance. This is something we will remember because this is the start of something new. This is the start of something new. God works in real time. We all find ourselves, I think, in one Egypt or another, or have found ourselves in one Egypt or another. We have found ourselves bound and constricted by something, whether that's behavioral or substance addiction, maybe it's bad or abusive relationships, maybe it's poor self-care, maybe it's poor vocational health. Whatever it is, we know what it's like to be in some kind of bind or constricting situation. We know what it's like to yearn for freedom. We know what it's like to want something different, something better, something healthier, something more wholesome. We know what it's like to yearn for God's liberating power in our lives. In our story, we hear about these homes that are the place of this Passover festival, this place where God passes over the home because of the blood on the doorpost and the lintel. This is a temporary place for these people. While they have known this place their entire lives because they have lived in this place. They have served in this place. They have been enslaved in this place. Though this is the only place they know, it is a temporary place. Because God is about to do something new, and God is about to get them on the move. And once we get on the move, and once we pass out of that doorpost, we are gone forever. And God goes with us. We hear that in the gospel today. How are they supposed to eat this lamb? This is what it says. With loins girded, with sandals clad, and with staff in hand, and you are to eat hurriedly. That doesn't sound like a group of people that are waiting for the long haul, that are under siege. These are a group of people waiting eagerly for something that's imminently about to happen. This story, though it seems kind of a logical progression, sort of a technical writing on how to observe the Passover festival, really has something to say, I think, for this community. For our Lutheran community that puts so much store in the holy meal that we will be participating in just a little bit. For the Israelites in this most dire of situations, the blood of the Lamb on the doorpost watches over them as they leave and as they enter their homes. As God is about to do something new for them, it is the blood of this Lamb that protects them, that shows them and assures them that God will not abandon them. This is our meal. We will eat of the blood of the Lamb this morning. We will eat of God. This Lamb will become fuel for our bodies. It will go with us into the world as we try and liberate ourselves and go with God to be liberated by God. We know that God will be with us. Because that is the promise in the meal. When we come to this meal, we come knowing that God forgives us and loves us and also commissions us. When the Israelites are freed, they are not freed from hardship. They are freed from death. They are freed from slavery, but they are not freed from hardship. We know from their story that things get tough, that they wander the desert. Things get tough. When they come to the promised land, it is already filled with people, and they thought they were going to be the only ones there. Things get tough. When we come to the meal on Sunday mornings, we are not assured that things will be easy. We are not assured that things will be easy. In fact, we can be assured that things will get tough. Because if we are to be liberated, all of the world has to be liberated. This text is not for an individual or even an individual family. We here tell the whole congregation of Israel, the entire nation, this is their message. This is their protection. This is their liberation. This is not just your protection and your liberation. This is the protection and liberation for the whole world, for all of creation. When we come and we feast at that bread and at that wine, we are participating in a meal that is so much bigger than ourselves. And yet, sometimes I think when we think of bigness and we think of things bigger than ourselves, we think it's not necessarily for me also then. What can one person participate in that great system? The great thing about when we come to communion is you will hear the words, given for you. Given for you. This is for you. For whatever Egypt you find yourself in or that you are coming out of, this promise of forgiveness and grace and love and liberation, this promise is for you. And then the great thing about this meal is you move on after you have consumed that bread or that wine, and you hear those same words spoken for your neighbor. Given for you. It is given for you. It is also given for your neighbor. This is a quote from a fellow clergy person. The economy of death is addicting. We pick up what we were supposed to let go. We keep resetting our clocks to the quotas of Egypt. When the day is done, we take off our shoes, we put down our staff, and we dawdle by the door. The meal that we come to taste on Sunday mornings is more than just a maintenance sort of meal. It's more than just hearing and feeling the healing that God gives to us. it's also a commissioning to go and do something different. This is your month. This is your day. This is the start of something new and different for you. But like any human being, right, we fall back into what we know. And so this meal will always be here for you, as many times as you need it. These pews will always be here for you. Whenever you need to hear a word of love and inclusion, or when you need to hear a word of challenge, this place and this gospel will be here for you. And that's what we get in the meal on Sunday morning. It's not only the promise, but it's an invitation to continually taste this promise, because this taste will leave our mouth. We are human beings. We are temporary. We are mortal. We are flawed. We are broken, but not God. God never fails us. God never fails God's people. The Exodus is the climax of the Old Testament, just as the resurrection is the climax of the New Testament. It is evident that God never fails God's people. Amen.